congratulations on the
Thank
film.
you.
I saw it last week. No, I saw it on Tuesday, and it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
was-
that's an apt way of describing it.
Yeah, I was really taken with it. I really thought that it was like a great old-fashioned kind of action-adventure film, which really appealed to me a lot.
Great.
Tell me a little bit about just sort of putting yourself in the mindset of that kind of thing. It's big action. You're on the go. You're jumping, kicking, running, all sorts of things throughout most of the film. Is there a different process to prepare for that than there would be for a part that's slightly less physical?
I don't know. I've very rarely done a part that's slightly less physical. For the most part, the majority of the time that I've spent as an actress was spent on Lost playing Kate Austen, and she was an extremely physical. It was a very physical role, because even when we were just doing regular talking scenes, they were usually intense, and they were in the jungle or on the beach or in a boat, or there was just very rarely a moment where it was relaxed. So the closest I've ever had to that kind of experience would have been on Real Steel or on a couple of the films that I've done. But really, for me, there's no different preparation. I mean, I'm a person who likes to stay healthy, so it's not like I suddenly run to the gym and madly try and get in shape for the role. There's none of that. I show up and do my job the same way I would for any other role. Thankfully, Peter Jackson's team was wonderful at preparing us. I mean, there was a lot of training that they offered to us, and so I had about a month of weapons, stunts, dialect, language, and movement training for the role.
There's a lot. I mean, we could go through any of those things, the weapons training alone, because we have to really believe that she can, hit a target from 1,000 feet away and all that kind of stuff. So what training specifically was involved in all that kind of thing? Was it anything you had ever considered before, that you had done before? Had you ever?
Yeah, I used to be an archery instructor at a kids camp, so I knew basically how to shoot a bow and arrow. I mean, I think I used to be better than I am now.
Right.
It was years ago. It was like, well, it would have been 20 years ago now, or almost.
Yeah.
So
when you were 3.
Yeah, when I was, I was the instructor, so hopefully I wasn't 3. But I did find the weapons to be particularly difficult, because I am not necessarily, I don't consider myself physically skilled. I'm just physically gritty.
Right.
And so that's why I played soccer, because you don't need a lot of accuracy and skill. You just need to be, have endurance and grit.
Right.
So a role like Kate Austen was an easier fit, because I had to do was things like fall off a cliff, climb up a tree, things that don't really require a lot of skill, just grit. And this one I had to be really, I had to be really I had to learn particular skills, knife flipping and archery, and then specifically how to, kill and make it look convincing. And that was less, that was more challenging for me.
And I suppose that this is a new female character for the series, and I suppose there is the responsibility that comes with that, because young girls and women are going to look to this character as a role model of some sort, very likely.
There's a huge responsibility on so many different levels, especially being that I'm a creation of Peter Jackson, not a creation of Tolkien. But specifically to what you said, which I think is an apt question, one of the things that I struggle with powerful female roles in the media right now is a lot of the times I think that's associated with male violence. If a woman can kill and slaughter like a man, then she's suddenly a powerful woman, which I actually think diminishes her power. I don't think it makes her powerful. And I like that this character is a soft-hearted, compassionate elf, driven out of her need for justice and her seeking for the truth. And I think that is more primarily a distinctly female power. And I actually think that in the past, vulnerability and compassion have been associated with weakness, and I think that they give a woman her power.
And what would you like then people to take away from the character?
That is what I want people to see. I want people to see a woman driven out of compassion to do the right thing, and therefore, I mean, she's skilled, and you don't want to mess with her.
Deadly,
I mean, she's totally deadly. But I think that the fact that most of the men in this film are driven by greed. They're driven by ego, by selfish aims, and she isn't. She's driven by her desire to protect the vulnerable and the weak.
what I have always really liked about the Lord of the Rings movies, and then now up to the second Hobbit film, is that they are really very primal in what they are about. They're about good and evil. I don't know whether it's because Tolkien wrote these during the Second World War, when there was a very definite evil and a good side and a bad side. Things were very clearly defined. But for me, that's always been something that has that I've taken away from these. It's not that they're simplistic, but they are certainly very well crafted in terms of what they're about.
Well, and The Hobbit itself was very simplistic. The Lord of the Rings trilogy was much more complex, and there was some depth of character, and there was some real exploration of incredibly universal themes. The Hobbit was a very simple book written for children, and he actually wrote that one in the 1930s.
Right.
And so I think when Peter decided to bring it to the screen, what he realized very quickly was, if we're going to make this entertaining, we need to expand on this story, because there really wasn't enough character development to make a film out of.
Right. Let alone 3 films.
Let alone 3 films.
Tell me a little bit about working with him. I've met him a couple of times, and there seems to be like a sort of a twinkle about him. You know what I mean? There's something that is sort of mischievous about him, and it always seems like he's thinking just like a little step ahead.
Yeah. He is. Peter's he's in his mind a lot, and he like you said, he's always thinking, and the wheels are always turning, and you can see that happening when you're talking to him and when you're with him. And so as a result, working with him is actually a beautiful double-edged sword, because he's such a genius that he works in chaos. But he's also such a genius that you trust the chaos, and you trust that ultimately it's gonna result in something incredible.
Well, when I was writing about your film, I was thinking back over the first 3 Lord of the Rings films and the last Hobbit and this one, and there's a remarkable consistency to those movies. And to take something that is that sprawling and that complicated, and there's so many characters, and there's good and evil and necromancers and elves and everything, and form it into one whole that I'm pretty sure that you could watch pretty much start to finish, and it would all make sense, and it would feel like one piece of art, not something that was cobbled together over however long.
2 decades.
2 decades, yeah.
He did that intentionally. He has worked. I mean, nobody worked harder on that film set than Peter Jackson did, and that was an intention of his, and I love that. And I think, again, if he had stayed 100% accurate to the books, then like the books, it would have felt disjointed. The Hobbit, and I am a huge Tolkien fan, so this is no criticism of Tolkien's writing, but The Hobbit is a very different thing than Lord of the Rings, the trilogy. And Peter knew that he wanted it to be one cohesive story, because ultimately what happened is Tolkien then, of course, after he wrote Lord of the Rings, went back and started piecing the books together and filling in the gaps and making the world a greater whole that was a cohesive unit. And so Peter's read all of those subsequent works. He knows all of the appendices and the Silmarillion and everything that came beyond, so he was able to take all of that afterthought that Tolkien had and infuse it into his films and give us that feeling of, in my mind, what I imagined what Tolkien wanted to do if he could have gone back and rewritten it all and made it all one.
Well, it does really feel like one whole thing. How do you feel about being a part of this?
I'm honored. I was a huge fan of the books, and then a huge fan of Tolkien's adaptation. Jackson's adaptation of the books. And when they asked me, I had at that point I was 3 months out of giving birth to my first son. I thought I had retired into a life of writing and motherhood. I thought I was done with acting. And then he called, and I was like, this is too huge of an honor. I can't say no to this. I have to do this. This is something that I've dreamed about since I was a little girl, and so I took the job. And it has been such a positive experience. It's actually really kind of changed my mind about my profession.
Really? And how so? And without prying, I just think that, when you're on a show that was as huge as Lost is, it changes everything for you. It changes your life. There's people waiting to take your picture everywhere you go, all that kind of stuff. Was that the stuff that kind of pushed you away? Or?
For the most part, yes. That was the beginning of it. That was when I first went, this isn't for me, I can't do this, I don't like this, this doesn't fit. I'm a small-town Canadian girl. It doesn't, it just doesn't jive with me. And then my resolve really to retire came when I realized it wasn't just that aspect of it. It was actually the job itself that was killing me. I'm a very non-dramatic woman. I keep my life very simple. I don't have a lot of emotional energy to spend, or what I call waste. And so I don't argue with my spouse. I don't make drama where there doesn't need to be any. I don't have girlfriends who are dramatic because I just can't stomach it. And having a job that required that I be at the height of drama emotionally for 14 hours a day, all day, every week for 6 years running, was doing bad things to my health, to my psyche. I wasn't in a good place. And I really believe that if you're not happy, get out. It doesn't matter how much someone's paying you or how famous you've become. It's not worth it if you're not happy and you're not healthy.
Right. That is a very well-grounded Canadian way of looking at it. I love it. It's lovely to see you.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.